tone here. I don't look at myself or restorative practices as, you know, an exact subject area where there's some expert that teaches out to folks who don't know. I think it's growing. I think you have to be a lifelong learner. So we have some materials and some things that we've been aware of that we'd like to share. Some of you probably are familiar, some of you aren't. But either way, we're just going to go through. So as you have questions or comments, feel free. Co-worker, Luther Burbank environment, informal. So don't feel too uptight about the whole situation. We'll begin talking about restorative practices. Restorative justice and restorative practices are terms that are kind of used interchangeably. But the issue is restorative practices is kind of like an overall umbrella that involves everything from how you greet and how you interact to the actual programs and subsets that you have. Restorative justice is more along the lines of things that happen after an event occurs. So I'll go a little bit more into that, but I don't want you to be thrown off by seeing the term restorative practices. The IIRP, which is the International Institute of Restorative Practices, kind of describes it as seen above, a social science that studies how to build social capital and achieve social discipline through participatory learning and decision making. The IIRP is kind of where a lot of the practices are home for folks. They do a lot of training. They offer classes. I believe Mr. Taylor is working out some things in the schedule next week he'll be taking a class. So it's a really good website, iirp.edu, and I think I may have this on one of the later slides, may or may not. So it's a really good spot to go to kind of learn more about it, grab resources. We'll have plenty of things for you to take today, but I just want to kind of let you know why the IIRP was so instrumental in this training for me personally. Some of the use of restorative practices helps to reduce crime, violence, and bullying, improve human behavior. You can kind of read it. I don't want to read to you. But what I like to do is highlight what restorative practices are built to do, as opposed to saying what they're doing for us. So I want to be very careful. I don't go places and say, Luther Burbank is using restorative practices, all our suspension rates are low, they've reduced crime, and everyone feels great. I can't speak for everyone at Luther Burbank. There are still students who struggle, who feel uncomfortable. There are staff who don't feel as comfortable as they should. So I'm very careful to try to speak for everyone and say this is what it has done for us, but this is what it is built and designed to do. Any questions on this slide? Awesome. So I got into this a little bit on the last slide, but I want to break it down. How does the term restorative practice and restorative justice differ? So it distinguishes it by saying restorative practices is more of, restorative justice is reactive. So when you hear the term restorative justice, something's been done, and now you seek justice, and justice in the form of a restorative approach. So it's fine to use restorative justice, but at Burbank we always say restorative practices because it's not just that, it's peer court, it's harm circles, it's what you do in your classrooms, it's SEL. There are a lot of practices that go into restorative justice. So what I will do is I will hand out a quick reading about the history of restorative practices around the United States. So this is from, I'll get you this from the reading, it's the Restorative Justice Handbook. It's an excerpt from there. And so I'll get you the author and title of that. But this is a quick reading about how they kind of begin a trial and error run in Pennsylvania at a high school. And so I'd like for you to read and see the initial thoughts and reactions and compare to kind of how we as Luther Burbank getting started the last year and a half, 2 years, our mindset compare and contrast to what was going on here. I highlighted a couple of those things. I agree with you. That's always been, in my experience, like this huge burden put on the back of the educator where it's like, okay, everything goes, array and it goes just out of the window, it's on you. You have to teach them how to have manners, and you have to make sure they eat, and they code, and then they have to learn these lessons, and they have to pass the test, and sometimes it feels like it's all on you, and you're like, wait, I have a family, I have other things, but that kind of goes to what you say, it's still kind of like a responsibility, but how do you shoulder that when, it's not your wheelhouse, it's not familiar, it's not your child, And so it's difficult. One of the things I work with most frequently is separating the deed from the doer, particularly when you're dealing with the discipline side of the house. And it's like, it has to be some balance when you're suspending a student or you're sending a student, you're assigning a consequence, to still have that relationship. And that's something I try to pride myself on and say, listen, this doesn't mean I'm not going to give you a hug tomorrow. This doesn't mean that I think you're a bad person. This is just what happened. These are, you know, the facts. This is what is out there. This isn't what I'm saying about you or what I'm determining. This is just what happened. And so a lot of times it's all about the choices. They come in and I say, listen, you know the procedures, you've been here before, this is what we have, this is what you did, let's look at the referral together, let's talk about what you could have done differently, but it's not me bringing something out of the sky and saying, okay, today because you did this, I think 3 hours attention, because that's how I'm feeling. No, it's me saying, this is the rule, you know, and it's not because I'm just putting this on you. You know you've had a bad day, so this is how we can kind of restore this and make it so that we can separate you from that bad deed or that misstep that you have. So I think that's very important. And when you talk about the language you use and not saying, well, you're always doing this, or you're such a negative person, or you're such a knucklehead, then that is part of their title. You know, it talks about when you have names, and if people have names, sometimes they associate themselves with the meaning of the name. And so if you put that tag, it kind of marriage, you know, makes it a marriage, and then folks are like, okay, well, this is who I am, so I may as well act out. As opposed to saying, hey, you know, it says in here, it said really high standards and expectations for them, and then when they don't live up to those, and you hold them accountable. So that was really great. Anyone want to add something else before we go ahead? Okay.
Well, I've been more of a direct witness to what Victoria said in our SLC with the harm circles, but there was the part where they're talking about how this academy started doing circles and how other students started expressing how other students' behaviors were affecting them. And I feel like that to me is what I'm the most excited about all of this. What I feel like has been a huge theme from the ones that have been done this year is that other students, sometimes we think about like, how is this going to make my job easier and how am I going to stress less, but it's really about involving the other students. And I know that with Victoria does circles, she's just a facilitator. The kids are leading it all. And so there's so much benefit from the whole term restorative to me. I love that term. Yes, one person we hope will learn new habits, ways to change their negative behaviors, but at the same time we hope that other students become empowered and take responsibility of the community. They're part of the process. Yeah, you may not be the bad kid, but you're responsible for each other. And that's hard to implement. It is.
Very good line. Okay, so I'm going to do just a activity. We're first going to work in dyads 2 together, and then that's going to go to 4, and then 4 into 8. These are going to be very quick questioning rounds. I've already kind of figured out partners. So if you two would work together, you two work together. Mr. Green working with Kaler, and then we have these two working together. You two, you two, you two, you two. All right, and then when we do 4s, just get the next partnership next to you, okay, to make this go. So these are going to be quick questions. I'm thinking 30 seconds a round. So it's going to feel a little like speed dating. Not that I've ever done that. Yeah, I think standing up is good. It'll make it easier for us to combine forces. Sorry. Push the chairs in so no one gets hurt. And here we go. If you were an animal, what would you be and why? With your group, you guys are going to read the quote. They all relate to restorative justice and what our mission is, what we're trying to do at Burbank to some level. I'd like you guys to read it, discuss it, like how does it affect you, how do you think it relates, your gut response to it, and then one person will basically write down the group's overall response to it. So when we're done, we should have 6 responses for each quote. Any questions?
These are on the poster.
On the poster. So nice and big so we can see it. And then when we stop our rotation, on the last poster you're on, you're going to basically read the quote and present it to us and kind of give us a synopsis of what people thought about the quote. Like, we saw this, we personally thought that. Good. Okay, great, let's go.